I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about philanthropy. Um, I feel like there's a misperception about philanthropy that it is necessarily a good thing. So I'd like to point out that there are two kinds of philanthropy. There is altruistic philanthropy, where people are trying to help other people, under which there are certain subcategories that I won't go into at this point. And then there is strategic philanthropy, in which people are performing or contributing in a philanthropic way, but they have a goal unrelated to the philanthropy they're doing that motivates them. So let me give you an example of altruistic philanthropy. If I donate $10 billion, as if I ever could, to help orphans, a good cause. Orphans disproportionately experience bad things. And a lot of them end up with addiction problems and become criminals or become homeless, have very difficult times in their lives. But if I were to donate that, I would do it out of the genuine desire to help them. Okay? Now, a strategic movement, or move, I should say, would be instead where I was donating that money not because I cared about the orphans, but because I cared about public opinion, or I cared about the tax breaks that I would get, or I was simply doing it randomly to fulfill legal requirements of corporations in the country in which I was based or operating, depending on the laws. So that's an example. So basically, when you are being altruistically philanthropical, you're doing it to help. When you are strategically philanthropical, you are doing it with ulterior motives that are, I don't want to say always, because then you get into exclusions to that, but that are generally going to be selfishly motivated. So you can ask yourself questions like, if you look at Bill Gates's business model that formed Microsoft and made it into a giant, where it initially kind of hijacked the idea of Windows from the Mac system that the Apple people were developing at the time and showed to him. And then used a business model where they would continually produce revisions of Windows that were never fully, well, we like to say baked in the programming world sometimes, but basically there are a certain number of problems in the operating system or in the products that needed to be resolved, but were functional enough that they felt they could release it without getting into too much hot water with the public. And this was done again and again and again. Anybody who's been around long enough to have seen the progression from Windows 3 all the way up to the current Windows, or Apple or anything else, you can see there's a progression, and you can see what their standard was in terms of the acceptable minimum quality. And ironically, having a higher quality did not guarantee success. There were other factors in play. Okay? So, does that mean that Bill Gates' foundation, Bill and Melinda's and his wife's foundation, is altruistic or strategic? Well, I can't answer that question, but it is a question that should be answered by somebody somehow. And the same is true of any other major philanthropical effort. What are the motivations? What is being stated, and what is actually the reason? So, when the U.S. went into Afghanistan, was it because of the desire to put a pipeline through that had been blocked because the Taliban and the American government couldn't agree with each other, or was it because of terrorists? Was it because they wanted to free Afghanistan, or was it because they wanted to catch Osama bin Laden? When we invaded Iraq, was it because of weapons of mass destruction and helping the Iraqi people and helping the Shia people, Shia Muslims, or was it because of oil? Was it because of strategic partnerships with other countries that felt threatened by what Iraq was doing? Or was it something completely different from oil? Was it to benefit American companies like Halliburton and Black and Root and stuff, or something else? So when you see a company behaving philanthropically, it doesn't mean they're doing it with a good heart. If you see an individual behaving that way, it also does not mean they're doing it with a good heart. Just food for thought.